Great times. I just want to go over the portfolio review. I want to highlight a couple things that people have done so that you have a better idea as to what I'm expecting for the final portfolio, which is worth 30% of your mark. It's optional again, so take this information and apply it for this portfolio, or maybe apply it for next year if you were to do a portfolio again for math, depending on what happens next year. Okay, I just want to highlight right here. You're supposed to, this year, the mini portfolio will also highlight your ability to make connections between and amongst major quadratic concepts. Okay? So, it's the connections that I was trying to underline here at the introduction of the task. And then further down the assignment, I gave an example of homework collaboration right here. And I tried to highlight for you that this is missing the connection to other concepts that we're asking you to do for this portfolio. So that homework collaboration was a great one. It's a great exemplar, but it doesn't do everything I'm asking you to do, which is make connections. Okay, so I'll show you an example of some people who make connections. So right here, this is a great example of someone that has tried to make connections, and it's not programming me with their annotations. They're making connections as to why and logically explaining why factoring works. Okay, and so they wrote that right here, explaining 0 times anything is going to be 0, so each of those things should equal to 0, and so they solved for each of those numbers. Okay? So even though it might not be the most pleasant in terms of presentation, the connections were there, and so this particular slide got perfect. Right? This person, before they use a quadratic formula, they took one part of the quadratic formula, which is the discriminant, right? They're making connections. And they use that discriminant to determine if it's factorable, or if there's how many roots there are. Right? There's a number of people that did that to make connection. They just didn't use quadratic formula, right? They're trying to connect other parts of the learning and demonstrate their learning. Right? You're not just there to show me that you can use a quadratic formula. You're like, oh, there's another connection I can make. Oh, the discriminant. What does the discriminant tell me? Right? Over here, a lot of people did completing the square as part of their portfolio, and right here, they said factor A and B value in preparation to make a PST, a perfect square trinomial. You can make a perfect square trinomial by adding and subtracting b over 2 squared, right? And the reason why you're subtracting is so that the quadratic stays the same. So this person is like demonstrating so many things about understanding what completing the square is and why and logically is doing, right? Distribute out the trinomials. You underline the tri because you want to be able to factor, and then collect like terms, and you factor that perfect square trinomial. So this person is making connections to that factoring unit that we did, right? So now for this final portfolio, I'm opening up the ability to not just annotate by writing, but you can annotate by typing. And you're free to use a website like this person did, or however you want to express yourself through your portfolio. So you can use websites, or you can use videos, or you can use Google. You can expand beyond Google Slides like this person did. All right. Now, again, this person's making connections. Before this question even started, right? This is just the question with the soccer ball, right? And it's in vertex form. Before this person even started, they started to analyze what this information was about and showed off knowledge about what the A value means, what the H value means, what the K value means, right? If the A value is negative, it's vertically reflected, right? It's going to be horizontal. Like, they're talking about transformation. They're linking other information. So when you see something in vertex form, analyze it and show what connections you can make. Even though the question might not necessarily need it, you're trying to show off what you've learned. Okay, hopefully that gives you a better idea as to what I'm expecting in a portfolio. Again, it doesn't have to be super neat. It doesn't have to be laid out super perfectly. Again, these are great examples. These people got perfect on each of those questions here. Okay, so it's mostly the content I'm looking for. Okay. Good luck, and if you have any questions, please email me or Google chat me, and then I can try to clarify.